Thank you so much. I was actually listening to Sandrine and I said, what am I going to say after Sandrine? I mean, she has just covered it all, but I think that what I was asked to address you now was to think about what kind of science we need to invest on to advance the well-being economy and the well-being framework. Of course, we have seen with the Prime Minister of Iceland, with the Minister of Scotland, that some leaders in this field are not waiting to get all the science right. We need to start moving. But I have to say that when you think about this broadening of the definitions, when you think about what Sandrine did to capture with new analytical models, what is the real impact of the economic decisions that we are taking, then it just gets you in the face. Because it's not about just GDP and GDP growth, it's about the distribution and the fairness of that growth, which is very difficult to capture for traditional economists. Fairness is not a concept that is very well put in the economic handbook. And as I said at the beginning, it's very difficult to try to assess it straightforward because it also depends on expectations and perceptions and societal goods. But the other thing is that how you capture trust. All of these things are also part of the well-being framework, but are very difficult to capture. And then this leads me to another reflection that we need to have, and that I feel it comes really very clear in the fantastic modeling work that the Club of Rome had been producing, which is the GDP metric has been also accompanied by the supremacy of classical quantitative economists. Therefore, all of the assumptions that we have in the economic rule book in terms of representative agents, rational choices, average well-being is just wrong. And this has just forget the distributional impacts, as was seen, and has forgotten also the question of sustainability. And therefore, the core question here, and I'm saying this because in my whole career where I have been promoting the inclusive growth framework, the fact is that it's very difficult to speak to the traditional economists and tell them, why don't we try to ensure that we have fair distribution of the outcomes of growth, fair distribution of the outcomes of growth? That's very complex. And therefore, for them, it's easier to just go to produce more and to consume more, because that will provide a much more fast and very simple and easy way to project how the economy and societies are doing. So therefore, I feel that it's very important that we try also to detach ourselves from these narratives. And from the narrative also, you mentioned the question of governance and governments, from this narrative that governments only intervene when there are market failures, because we have seen that market failures are getting so big that it's not going to be possible to address them. So this is one of the issues. The other issue, and you will excuse me because of course I am the ADG for Social and Human Sciences, why don't we try to capture the complexity of the reality in which we live? Why do we need to dissect the issues in a way that prevents us from understanding the dynamics? And that's why in the Social and Human Sciences we're saying to the economics, why don't we bring anthropology? Why don't we bring history? Why don't we bring social sciences, sociology, to try to understand human phenomena? And I don't think that's what's happening. You will correct me if I'm wrong, Minister. I don't think that's what's happening in the conversations that we usually have among finance ministers or economic ministers. And I think this is also very important to try to understand better the question of what matters for people. And finally, the very important question of science for what? Science and technology for what? And in this sense, I think that another elephant in the room is the question of the technological revolution, artificial intelligence, that is also reproducing the inequalities that we have in the broader economy. And what is happening there, and at UNESCO we managed to get in 2021 the adoption of the ethics of artificial intelligence, and the question was, technologies for what? Because we are just assuming that artificial intelligence is going to increase productivity and is going to make us better and bring us higher. But at the end, what is happening is that it's really reproducing the very unequal distribution of assets, distribution of knowledge, distribution of benefits, and therefore we need to change the narrative. It's not a technological conversation, it's a societal one, and we need to ensure that the outcomes of this technological disruption are going to enhance and really contribute to our human rights, human dignity, fairness, sustainability, etc. And this is something that we are working because we are implementing the recommendation on the ethics of AI in many countries. Final comment, and this is a reflection that we also need to have. Sandrine is taking a very high risk by speaking truth to power. And what we are seeing also in the context of discussing science and who invests in science and what kind of science, the truth is that we say, well, it is so clear, the scientific truth is there regarding climate. We still have climate scientists that are being harassed and that are being put aside. We are seeing how much scientists are also risking their safety because they decide to look into certain interplays that may touch on the interest of very powerful groups. And that's why at UNESCO, again, we launch, and I thank my member states because they're also being very supportive and brave, we launch a program about safety of scientists, safety of science, and the use of science for decision-making. Because this can help us also to recover something that had been in the conversations all over the place, which is trust. Trust in institutions, trust in science, trust in the outcomes. It's not that people are crazy and become polarized, is people are very disappointed about the results of the economic paradigm, and therefore they are just coming to express their discontent and their lack of trust on the decision-making that we have. And therefore I feel it's also very important that we protect the scientific endeavors, that we invest in science, that we allow science to flourish independently of what are the outcomes or whether we like the outcomes, and that we continue looking for the best scientific endeavors to explain the very difficult contextual and conceptual issues that we're dealing with. Because in that way, we will be at least better informed when we take these decisions. It was very interesting when I was in my previous life at the OECD, when we started looking at economic outcomes, not as a GDP per capita, not even as a question of Gini coefficient, we started looking at household disposable income. And therefore, just looking at this very different conceptual tool to understand how people are faring regarding the economic progress just changed the landscape. Because then you see what Sandrine showed, that top income earners might capture a large share of the economic benefits. Bottom income earners might be their status just completely flat or declined. And therefore, I feel it's very important also to look at what tools we use to understand reality and then to act accordingly in terms of addressing those issues. So great to talk to you again. Take a look at this question of safety on scientists, where besides, of course, the scientists that are in zones of conflicts or that are just becoming refugees in so many places in the world, but at the end, how do we invest in science ecosystems that tell us the truth and push us for action? Thank you so much.